Mengert on the show today. Welcome to the show, Frank.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I got a chance to know Frank through a course I was taking through Shay Rowbottom's course. And if you're not already following him, he's got some great content, guys. If you're not following him, you should. But we're going to talk about his story, what he's gone through to kind of grow and even pivot his business over the years. Very interesting tag. I was just reading it today, Frank, about how you went from $140 now to good five-time business owner.
Oh yes, yeah. Been a journey. Hasn't happened overnight. That's for sure. Been going strong now, just over 20 years. But lots of fun, lots of lessons for sure.
So instead of an overnight success, it's 20 years of overnights.
Oh yeah, many long overnights. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, you know what gets on this thing? They're all about growth. So we're all thinking the same thing. This is Growth Monday, ways to grow our business, our career, our network. So we want to talk anything having to do with growth today. And just folks, if you're just now signing in, go and let us know where you're signing in from. What city, what state, or what country. If you're not in the United States, we'd love to hear from you. And we'll say hi to you. If you have any questions for Frank or myself, please pipe those in. Any comments, you're going to help participate and add to this discussion with myself and Frank. So I'm real honored to have him on. And he actually arranged his schedule because normally he works out his guns around this time, but he moved it for us. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah. Well, it's part of. I'm sure we'll get into some of this today, but consistency. We get one mind and one body, and I make sure that I carve out my time throughout the week to get to the gym. So it's buried into my schedule. But yes, a pleasure to be here and make adjustments for you for sure.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate that. I say that jokingly, but I do appreciate you taking the time to do that for us. And one of the things that I'll just start off with, when I was struck by this, you mentioned how you started off 20 years ago with $140 to your name, and you were kind of at a crossroads. Tell me about that crossroads you were at. Why were you at that crossroads?
I mean, young guy, really no, care in the world or nothing like that. Run around, hang with my friends, worried about the stuff that today doesn't matter whatsoever. But when you're young, those things, going out, having fun, that's what's important or what you think is important and the cool thing to do. And, I was spending money I didn't have, was working a job where I wasn't making a lot of money. And, I was really where I was like, do I continue to try to do this and, just grinding it out, or do I want to stop and really make a change and start to improve my life as a whole and start thinking about the future? And, I had $140. I could have went out and spent that in the weekend. Or I did what I did. I bought a mountain bike. I didn't have a car at the time, nothing. I bought a mountain bike and that was my ride, so I could get a job, a real job, and focus on it for starting to build some income.
Exactly. So that's where the journey started. Now since then, you've created five businesses, and so there's a lot of things you had to go through over that time. What would you say is one of the biggest things that's helped you to get from there to where you are now? Let's unpack that first.
So two things are, one is consistency. I think that's a big one for me. And then also a lot of patience. Like I said, 21 years I started this. The journey took a while too. I mean, I bought a mountain bike. I got a job washing cars, worked there for a while, saved my money, saved up enough money so I could get insurance and buy a car off the lot. I was washing cars at the dealership. Took that, parlayed that into getting a job. I was working at a paper mill. That job afforded me to go to school. I started my first company. And so all these little things that I was doing, even though a lot of times we go through life, we're making these small investments in ourselves, not really knowing when they're going to pay off or how they're going to pay off. But at the time, that's exactly what I was doing. I was doing these things and just knowing that I didn't want to go in reverse, and I didn't want to stay where I was at. And so it was up to me to every day make these incremental changes in my life and start making sure I was making progress and moving forward. And it's not leaps and bounds. Some days, yeah, you're going to make more progress than others, but some days you'll feel like wow, I did a lot, and I only got so much done, but you got something done. So for
Right.
me, I think it was the patience to know that I was playing a long game, and also the consistency to keep showing up and putting in the work.
Yeah, I like that point about the long game and consistency. So, when you first got out of school, did you go right into starting a business, or did you start working at a job first? How'd you do that part?
Yeah, so my no one in my family ever went to college. I didn't think I was going to go to college either. I wanted to when I was younger. I thought my dad was a truck driver. I thought I was going to be a truck driver. That was my ambitions was being a
Right.
truck driver, and provide his father, my grandfather was a truck driver. It was like the long line of truck drivers. So I was going to be a truck driver. And when I got this job at the paper mill, when I got the car, I got this job at the paper mill, and they did tuition reimbursement. And I found out about this probably like 3 months into the job. I was talking to someone and they were like, oh, yeah, they do tuition reimbursement. It's a great program. And I'm like, what? I was like, this is the best thing ever. After 6 months, you could get tuition reimbursement. So, like 6 months in one day, HR, and I'm like, I want to take advantage of this. I want to sign up for school. And they're like, okay, you go, you submit the receipts and everything, and we'll pay for up to 50%. So that's exactly what I did. I went to school. I got some financial aid for like, I think my first 2 semesters, I got financial aid and then they did the reimbursement. And then after my second semester, I actually got academic scholarships. So now I was getting the academic money, then I was getting money from work for the tuition reimbursement. That's how I went to school. Otherwise, I would have never, if I wouldn't have done the things that I did prior, I would have never went to school. So again, it's like you're making these investments in yourself, not knowing where you're going to pay off. So for me, I was able to go to school while I was working at this job. I was working the paper mill. I worked the overnight shift, which was 11 at night to 7 in the morning. And I'd get out of work. I'd go home and I'd just get ready for school. I'd go to school from probably 8:30 to 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the afternoon, depending on the day and the classes. Come home, sleep, do some homework, and I'd go back to work at 11 o'clock. And I did that till I graduated. And so that's why I went. That's how I went to school, by working at a job that actually helped put me through it. So I was extremely grateful for that job and the opportunity.
So, how did we get from the job to actually creating your first business? What inspired you to create your first of five businesses?
Inspiration probably didn't have anything to do with it. So I'm at this job again. They're putting me through school. There was a contingency where if you work there and they did the tuition reimbursement, you had to stay there for 5 years within the company. So I'm figuring no problem. This was a really big company. I'm from Connecticut, so it was a big company in New England. They had several different offices. My degree was computer science. I was going to get my degree in computer science and I was going to work there. I was going to move up to the front office where all the people in the suits were at.
Right.
I'm in the factory and they're walking by me in the morning. So that's going to be me one day. And so that was the goal, was get my degree, and they're going to put me to work because, of course, they want to continue the investment in me through my schooling. Well, I graduated from school, and probably, I think it was like 2 months later, so 3 months later, I went into work, and I was at this time, the whole time at the job, I was a top performer. I worked so hard, and anything I do, I always put 100%, 110% in. But I knew my whole department. I knew we used to make paper. I knew all these crazy things about paper making and oven temperatures and viscosity of all the liquids and all these crazy things that I wasn't expected to know. And so I thought, I was doing everything I could to advance in this company. And I went into work one day and they were like, oh, Noreen wants to talk to you. She's in the cafeteria. They had like a cafeteria with vending machines and stuff in there. And I walk in, I remember, I still crystal clear picture it. She's sitting at this round table in there with some paperwork, and I sit down all nervous because she's the plant manager and I hardly ever talked to her my whole time there. And she's like, we're gonna let you go today. We're gonna lay you off. And I was like devastated. My first reaction was like, how? How can you lay me off? I'm the best in my department.
Right,
no one
exactly.
can do what I can do.
Right.
And she was like, you're right. She's like, but you'll recover. She's like, I have people back there that have been back there for 20, 25 years that are not going to recover. That if I let them go today, they're never going to be able to, that this is going to be it for them. She said, you went to school, you're doing great things. She said, and I have no doubt in life that you'll find success. And at the time, I didn't realize it because I needed the money. I had
Right.
car payments and stuff. So I was
Yeah.
obviously walked out of there with 2 weeks severance pay, and pretty upset. And at the time, while I was going through school and stuff, I just was doing a side hustle. I was fixing computers, and I would do it for free at first until I was going through school and learning. I was in the hardware side of computer science. And then over time, people would say, "Hey, can you fix my computer?" I'd say, "Sure, $50, whatever, $75." And I started charging for it. So I had this little side hustle where I was fixing computers, and more word of mouth. People would say, "Hey, call Frank, call Frank." So when I lost my job, I basically made a decision where I had 2 weeks of severance, which wasn't going to last me long, where I said, I'm going to try to take this side hustle and make it my main hustle. Instead of going to look for a job. I never wanted to be laid off again. I never wanted to feel someone else in control of my destiny.
Right.
And that was the time and the decision I made. I said, I'm going to try this on my own and see what happens.
Oh, this is inspiring. I love this. Okay, so guys who are just signing in, let us know what city and state you're signing in from. Glad you're here. Let us know if you have any questions. We're talking about Frank and his early career and how he kind of got from where he was to the 5-time business owner. He's a LinkedIn expert and speaker and author, all that kind of good stuff. So those who are just not coming in, let us know what you would like to know. Where are you in your journey? Are you just now about to start your first business? Are you looking to grow your career? Love to hear from you. And I already have already came in and said hi. We got Henry Ware. He's a safety professional with RCI. Welcome. We have, of course, Joanne and Jonathan. Oh, Kirsten Granados. Kirsten Granados. Welcome. She says, hi, Rollis and Frank. Great to learn from you both. Well, glad you're here. Okay. So, Frank, I want to ask you this. In terms of your business, making that shift from being an employee with a side hustle to all of a sudden 100% owning your own business. I know there are some people who have finding themselves in that position right now. What was going through your mind at the moment? Tell me about that, and also tell me about how you overcame some of those fears of, oh my gosh, I probably need to find a job because I'm not going to make enough money, or that sort of thing.
So yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think back then, the hustle mentality and all this stuff 20 years ago wasn't really what it is today. I think now being an entrepreneur has been glamorized and stuff like that. So you see a lot more of it, a lot more common. So back then, it was just, I'm going to try to make this happen. And you're right. The biggest fear was, am I going to make money? I have bills to pay. There was a sense of urgency coming from me. And, going out there, I had no experience. Like I said, my father was a truck driver. My mother stayed at home and raised 4 children. I didn't have an entrepreneurial family to reach out and say, hey, how do I do this business thing here? So I figured it out most of it on my own, where I had to figure, some things is registering an LLC with the Secretary of State and getting insurance for a business. I mean, those are things that you have to do it. So from the very basic stuff, and then of course you have all these great ideas about wanting to run a company. You need clients that are actually going to pay you for the service that you're providing. And so now I had to go find more of those clients. And I had a couple that were paying me as needed, but I really needed consistent streams of revenue. And that was basically, I walked door to door in a very busy section of our state and the couple towns that I picked out. And I would walk for like the whole day up and down these roads. And I would knock on the businesses' doors. I would give them my paperwork. I had a business card, and I would say, hey, I'm an IT guy. I can help you with your services and automate some of your things, and, do my whole pitch. And, people were nice back then. Again, it was a lot easier. Now it's like no solicitation and stuff, but now, back then people were more welcoming, and, I got a lot of no's and, we're good and no, thank you and everything, but people were generally good. And then over time, I started to get people that said yes. It took a lot. I remember I would walk for hours and hours and every day I'm like, oh, I got to go and try. I would basically have a map of say, okay, I did this street, and all the busy sections where there was just nothing but businesses on the road. And that's what I did, trying to grow clients until I could build a book of business where people wanted to pay me on a consistent basis. And it probably took me 14 months maybe until I was really like in a groove where I was actually making money, where I was like, okay, I'm sort of safe now. So It was a while.
Now, at that time, did you have family, or is yourself, or
Yeah, it was just me. I was young in my early 20s, so I was young. No real nothing except me. So no one depending on me for income, which was great. But also just I was living on my own and stuff. So there was the urgency of, okay, I need reliable transportation. I need
yeah?
all those things. But yeah, luckily just me. That's all I had to care for.
You said you're living by yourself. You said.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so now you said consistency earlier. So tell me how the consistency helped you, because it sounds like you said 12 to 14 months you were doing this. How often were you doing this thing where you're walking down the rows and trying to get more clients and that sort of thing?
Oh, I did that for, I mean, I probably did business to business for probably a full 12 months where I would go. I mean, it wasn't as much every day. In the beginning, I literally mapped it out where I would say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk this road. I'm going to walk this road. And I would go and I would know where I got to. Like, okay, I got to 672 Main Street. Tomorrow I'm going to start at 73. And then I'm going to keep going and going. So I have this logbook of all the businesses that I hit up, and then ones where I drop stuff off and it's like maybe or call later, where I had some potentials in there. So I would keep track of that information, but there was plenty of times where I didn't want to go. Like I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this today. I feel defeated. Like I'm not getting anywhere. This is wasting my time. There's got to be a better way.
Right.
And then there was days where I went out there and people were nicer to me and some were like, yeah, we can use you, like, and give us more information and stuff like that. And so there's days where you felt defeated, and there's days where you got the little bit of glimmer of hope. So, but there's plenty of times where I wanted to give up, where I was like, I think I made a mistake. What am I going to do here?
Yeah.
So I went through that whole roller coaster of emotions.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that about we all doubt ourselves, right? Especially if we're not getting those results. But it goes back to it sounds like one of your core values is to be consistent. So you thought to keep doing this, even though you may not have got the results you want yet, you kept doing it. That reminds me of kind of building even a network here on LinkedIn. Well, wouldn't you agree in terms of how you built your network in terms of being consistent? Maybe you can talk to that for a moment.
Yeah. So I met, LinkedIn was kind of foreign to me a little over 2 years ago. I had a profile from, I think, 2009, probably when I was thinking of getting back into the corporate world and getting a real job. And when we were going through recession and everything back then. And I created an account, never really showed up much. And then a couple of years ago, I met Gary Vaynerchuk, and he said, you need to start creating content on LinkedIn. He's like, it's going to change your life professionally and personally. And that was May 2019. And I created my first piece of content. It took me a while. I didn't listen to Gary right away, but it took me a little while. And November, I put out my first piece of content. And that was 2018. November 2018, I put up my first piece of content. And then I just got hooked. I loved it. It was great. I started, interacting with people. Not a lot of people were doing video, and I was doing almost nothing but video back then. So yeah, it was, but it was showing up every day. And one of the first things I did was when I put my first piece of content out, I said, I'm gonna put this out there. Whatever, people hate it, love it, but I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to put one out. And I started out, I did I think 2 a week. And then people started to listen, and I did 3 a week, and then I did 4. And then in 2020, at some points I was definitely throughout 2019, and in 2019, I was putting out 7 pieces of content a week. I mean, I was going just overload. So it was fun, but it was addicting too, because I was getting to interact and meet so many different people, and that was a game changer for me.
That's when I started seeing your content as well. Henry piped in. He says, "I agree 100%. This is Henry from Houston. Hey, so I got another Houstonite here, Houstonian, I should say, with us on the line today. So thanks for being here. I usually ask my guests, what 3 words would you use to describe yourself? You've already talked about 2 of them. I want to see if you're going to change any of them. So what would be the top 3 words or hashtags you would use to describe yourself?
Well, my hashtag I use is Frankie Baby, and my
Right.
mother called me that growing up. That's but from a I mean, I guess I'm resilient for
Okay.
sure. So I would say definitely resilience.
Okay.
Um,
Resilient.
yeah. I mean the strength, not only physical but also mentally. I feel like I'm built pretty strong in here. Been through a lot. So that strength there. And then, yeah, I'd say the consistency piece, I'll stick with that one too, because I'm a big believer in consistency. I feel like that's been massive for me. And I always try to encourage folks to be consistent with it. I feel like we give up on things too fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I want to ask you about that resilience. I want to come back to that. But for a second here, I've heard a lot of people tell me who they say, I watched Gary Vee stuff, and you said you met Gary Vee.
Mhm.
So give me a little background on meeting. And first of all, before you even say that, folks who are watching, Gary Vaynerchuk, he's like this kind of big known marketing guy. He's all over the place in terms of his posting and social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. He's everywhere, and a lot of content influencers, content creators I've talked to refer to Gary's stuff, but most of them say they've seen his stuff. Very few have met him. So tell me about your experience in meeting him.
Yep. So it was almost just about 3 years ago I met him. I'd been following his content on YouTube mainly, where he was pretty popular there on YouTube for a while, consuming a lot of his stuff and just absorbing it. And there's some stuff in there, I think like anything, anyone whose content you follow, there's gonna be stuff that really resonates with you and stuff that, maybe you don't really agree with 100%. But for the most
Right.
part, a lot of the stuff that he said made a lot of sense. So he basically ran this program where he was allowing people to kind of tell their backstory and some personal information about them, and he was inviting them to come to his office in New York. And I'm in Connecticut, so it's 60, just about 60, 70-minute drive from me. And so I gave it a shot, put my story out there, and he, I was picked. I got to go to his office. We had a meeting with him. I mean, I sat with him for like an hour,
Wow.
met with his team, all his people on his team, different people we sat through, and then he ended up. It was like at the time they were calling it. It's called. They have it now, but it's a pay for service. It's called 4Ds. But 3 years ago, this is a little different setup, and now I think they charge like $15,000 for people to go sit with them. So they've turned it into a business. But at the
Right.
time, it was more. I think trying to build a program and stuff, and interact with people. So that's how that started.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. So what was the single biggest thing you felt like you got out of that whole experience?
That's a good question because I went to him and it wasn't the irony of it all was, I met Gary, this guy. I've consumed a lot of his content, was a big fan of his in general. But when he walked in the room and we had met with some of his other people and stuff, and then, we were a group, I think we were having lunch or something. And he like walked in the room and introduced himself. And when he walked in, it wasn't like, oh my God, Gary Vee. It was sort of like, I've been watching I've been having a one-way conversation with this guy for so long that it just felt normal. And he was just sat down, whatever. And it wasn't like anything. It was just so natural. But I had went there under the impression thinking I wanted to learn about my business. This business being the fourth business that I started when I saw him, I wanted to learn scaling, growth, what I should be doing, his interpretation of maybe some things, the magic button. Gary's going to tell me what's wrong with my business, and I'm going to walk away and I'm going to throw another 7 figures onto the business. I didn't know that I was going to go in there and he was going to say, you need to start being a marketer and start creating content. Because at the time I'd never even think to
Right.
put a camera on myself and record me. So that was big for me to walk out of there, getting that type of advice from him and then putting it into practice.
Makes sense. And a lot of us have been forced into throwing a camera in our face with Zoom, right? With the pandemic, right? Because if we have Zoom, we're typically going to have our camera on. We're going to our Teams or whatever software we're using,
Mm-hmm.
and we're in front of a camera. But it is different in the sense that I know some of your videos, it's just you and the camera. You're not actually talking to someone else. So tell me how it was to get used to that dynamic of kind of just talking just straight to a camera.
Yeah, I remember my first video very clearly because I was in my old office. I sat down on my chair and just flicked the camera on. And I was sitting there and I tell people it was like a hostage negotiation video. It looked like someone had me for ransom. And I was like, please come get me. I think I looked scared.
Right.
I was, you could hear it in my voice trembling and I rambled on for a little bit longer than I should have. But it was whatever. It was like I took a shot.
Yeah.
I released it. I wasn't perfect, and yeah, so it was a little bit nerve wracking, but it is. I mean, now everyone's like, "Oh, you're a natural." I'm like, "Yeah, well, 2 years ago, I wasn't a natural." Yeah, you talk to a camera for 2 years straight, you become a natural. So yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So true. Gwen. Hey, good to see you, Gwen. She came in. She says Houstonians rock. So I have another Houstonian who's on. Okay, so I have a fun question for you. You ready?
sure.
Okay. Would you rather? This will probably take you back to your days when you were driving around these businesses. Would you rather drive 100 miles on a freeway with speed bumps every half mile, or drive 100 miles on a freeway that is completely covered with those little reflective lane dividers?
I'd probably do the speed bumps. I think the lane dividers is just consistent noise. At least the speed bumps, I could go slow. I don't need to go super fast. I'll just go slow and just popping over them. Yeah. But those annoying, I mean, if you drift over too far and you hit those things, it's like, pop, 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 pop. I mean, I can't wait to get out of those things. So yeah, I think that the constant noise would drive me crazy.
Yeah, yeah, guys in the comments, I want you to answer that same thing. And it goes back to what you said earlier about consistency. You don't mind if you have to go a little slower as long as you're consistent, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, tell me this: so five out of your five businesses, which one was the most fun to get started and get off the ground?
Um, well, I mean, I'd say I learned the most from my first business. I think that was when I look back and I'd say, okay, the most, like I learned so much because I was forced into it. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
made me, when we talk about resilience, and I
Yeah.
learned so much from there, what I was actually capable of. Like you never know until you test yourself what you're actually capable of. So I think a lot of success and failure I learned in that first company. I mean, from the fun standpoint, this company here, this EBM is my fourth company. We're a national HR technology firm. This has been the most fun for me because this is I've never achieved this type of growth and scale with any company that I have today. So this is, I mean, I have a legitimate business, national employees everywhere. So, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, sure, I have times where it's not fun, but I was just talking to someone this morning. I love coming into work every day. It's not, this isn't work and we have an office, but I love showing up. I'm excited to come in here every day. And so for me, that it's like, I've never had this type of passion for anything else that I've ever done. And I hope I have this for a long time into the future. But this has absolutely been the most fun business I've ever run, for sure.
That's awesome. Now, how did you get into that business?
So being a tech guy, so my first company was a technology firm. I ran hardware. So we did like servers and storage and all types of stuff around IT infrastructure. And then the second company I started was a security and surveillance. So we did access control, we did CCTV, alarms. My third company was totally off. It was way different. It was a building maintenance company where I had this idea of, you hire a firm and they could come in and they can do your plumbing, your electrical, your HVAC, kind of the one-stop shop.
Right.
You have, that didn't work out so well. And then my fourth company was this, which was EBM. And then my fifth company I started last year, which was a real estate holding firm where I've been making some investments in commercial real estate. So yeah, I mean, the companies, the five, this fourth company I started is sort of, I saw a need in the insurance space for HR technology back, 10 years ago almost, where it wasn't really popular.
Right.
Now it's like you can't live without it. But 10 years ago, it wasn't really much on the market. So I just saw, I mean, I think like most entrepreneurs, you see a problem and you think you can solve it. And that was my goal. I went into it thinking I can do better here. And so that's how that started.
Yeah, that's awesome. So give me an example of how resiliency played into, are you needing resiliency played into you and your business? Where did you have to be resilient?
Well, I'll tell you my second company, which was fun. That was a CCTV. That was, we did all the security, surveillance, access control stuff. I had started my first company, achieved some success, was doing pretty well. And I figured this entrepreneur thing is pretty easy. And we started another company, and I got some ideas. We're already in that space, sort of. We can get some clients. So I started this second company doing this, and we were building up a client base, and I had one big client that was almost, I would say, 80% of our revenue. We were doing, there were daycare centers all across the northeast,
Right.
the eastern corridor. So we were setting up all their security cameras, everything that needed to be done. And we built out their processes. We built out their equipment. I mean, everything that was a blueprint that we designed and built. And they fired us. We had no contracts. We had nothing that protected our IP. It was just a handshake deal where I thought we're doing a good thing. Why would they fire us? That we created efficiencies for them, and I was way wrong. And so we lost. I mean, everything. That was it. The business couldn't sustain itself because of the fact that we had all of our eggs in one basket.
Right.
And even though I was running the IT company, this was another company that I was running where people depended on the income and all those things. So for me, it was a time where I was like a rude awakening for me, because now, I mean, I learned a lot of lessons from that, thinking you can't just go into a business shaking people's hand and thinking that everyone's going to be trustworthy and honest. But I was banking on continuing the money. You start to live a lifestyle. You start to have things
Yeah.
where you're expecting these. I mean, we were doing consistently a couple schools every few months where I knew these big checks were coming, and then it was like gone. So it was not only a wake up from a business perspective, but also from my personal. And it took, I mean, yeah, I got my butt kicked for a little while. I rebounded. I wasn't like, oh, I'm done. I was like,
Right.
we'll get through it, and we did. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's would you, let me ask you if you would agree with this, and maybe other entrepreneurs, if you're listening to this, I want to hear your thoughts too. Do you think there's a measure of just like kind of almost like a leap of faith or running on faith in areas where you lose that big client, you don't have any specific data or proof that you can come back, but you've just got this just belief or this faith that you can come back? How important do you think that is, or do you think it should be totally based on the numbers? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you that what I learned from that. I mean, now I run. I mean, we have hundreds of clients now. Not one of them would impact us too greatly if they fired us today. And that was a bit definite lesson I learned. That I think I'd rather have a bunch of smaller groups that are paying me on a consistent basis, where if one leaves me, don't worry, another one's going to come along. No one's going to get hurt. I don't need to lay people off. I don't need to make any massive changes in the business model. Where if you have a couple of clients that are bringing you $1 million a year, or even more, where if you lose $1 million client, then you're probably, that's people that are going to get hurt by that, processes, things that you're betting on for your budget and stuff. So I would encourage anyone who owns a business to not rely everything on one client, because it's the revenue piece where you're dependent on them, but B, those clients tend to bully you around. And they know that they're
Mm,
paying you so much, where they'll start to say, well, we want this and we want that, and you
yeah.
need to do this. And then you're like, you're now their client basically. And cause they're cutting the check. So I think
Yeah.
that's a bigger piece of it too.
So did you change after you lost that big client? Did you change your business model? Where like, you know what, we're not going to take clients that big. We're just going to go with smaller ones and just grow it from that way.
We had been running that. So the security surveillance company that had been running for, a couple of years, and really wasn't paying attention to the market at all. We really ignored any new business opportunities except this school, because this school kept us so busy. And so when we lost them, it was like, do we start from scratch again? Or economically, did it make sense to just cut it and cut the company. And that's what we did. I just closed the company because it would have been trying to start from scratch again. And at the time I wasn't ready to make the investment in trying to rebuild a company that had been running for a couple of years. And so, yeah, that was it.
I appreciate your transparency on this, and this may be a good lesson for somebody who's watching this. Is that sometimes it is okay to cut and run and do something else, because there's an old saying about sunken costs. You're like, oh, I put so much into this, and I don't want to give up on it. But sometimes that probably is the best answer. Was that the best answer for you? You think, looking back?
Yeah. And honestly, I think anyone who's listening in, it underestimate what you just said right there. Because it's something I think is super important. I think people, like if you're starting a business, you'll get outside interference. Like if at the time when I was starting my IT company, if I had a wife, my wife probably would have been like, "You need to get a real job." Like, what are you doing? My mom or my dad or people externally that don't know what you're doing and know what you're trying to do, they're going to tell you a lot faster that you need to stop doing it. Wake up, man. You're never going to get there. You're wasting your time. I think internally that stuff, the outside interference has a major impact on you. But I think why you should listen to people and if there's some mentors and stuff, I think the only person who really knows when to call it quits is you. And for me, it's like, I knew it in my gut. Like I had that feeling. I was like, that's it, man, give up. Where at other times I knew that I followed my gut and it paid off. So I think internally, if you're sitting there and you're like, man, this is it,
Right.
like, I think I've tried everything, then there's going to be times where you do need to give up for sure. And I think people have to have that self-awareness that when to give it up and try something new and try to find success somewhere else.
No, I appreciate that. How has LinkedIn? I know you did a lot of stuff on LinkedIn in terms of putting content out there, putting videos out there for the past couple of years. How has LinkedIn in turn influenced your business?
So what's different about me from what a lot of people might see on LinkedIn, is when I show up there, I rarely talk about my company. I don't talk about like any of the services and software for the most part. Once in a while, I put something out there about what we're doing, but a lot of the stuff I do is more about things I've learned about running a business, or, me personally, I like to have this attitude of gratitude. And I like to put that out into the atmosphere for people to try to attract people who are thinking the same thing. So for me, it's always been about building relationships, not building clients and prospects, right, and a pipeline. And I think people see that, and the people that have attracted to me because of the fact that, they're like, hey man, that Frank guy he's pretty good. He knows what he's talking about, or he seems like a cool guy. Right. Those are people that I've just, built these relationships over time, where when I get on the phone with someone and they are a prospective client, they're like, it's been built. And that's been amazing for me for the relationship building standpoint. I think it's closed the gap of the anonymity that we might have when you don't know someone. You have to get on the phone and kind of like, go through all that stuff. So that's the relationship building has been awesome.
That's cool. Would you recommend someone, if they're starting a business, to focus on LinkedIn as a marketing strategy, or would you recommend them to more of a wider approach to do several different platforms, or would you go back to 2000, early 2000s, when you were literally going down the freeway, hitting up businesses?
Well, I would say in 2021, where we sit today, knocking on businesses' doors, probably not. It's, they're closed.
Right.
They don't want to see any strangers.
Yeah.
So, given the current state we're in, I believe in the power of a brand. I never knew really what a brand was before. So I think that, the brand and whether it's a personal brand that you're building for yourself, or you're building a brand you're trying to build a brand for yourself that moves into a company. I think that's more important now than ever. You really need to know where your audience is. Like where are they showing up? My audience shows up on LinkedIn. I work with white collar professionals for the most part. They're all over LinkedIn. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. I think the people that I sell to, they show up on Facebook more for personal stuff. I mean, that's just how it happens. if you have a younger demographic, there's a lot of course, on things like TikTok and other areas, or Instagram does well with restaurants and fitness and some coaching programs. So I think it's okay to try stuff. I mean, I have an Instagram. I show up on these platforms. I think how you show up needs to be tailored for the audience that might be there to consume your content.
Yeah.
And you absolutely have to try it, and not try like, oh, I made a post on Instagram, I only got 2 likes. I'm not giving up on that. I think you have to be consistent again and try things for a while to see, what's going to pop the most, because you can't spend your time everywhere. I can't show up on LinkedIn all in the way I do, and then also try to do that on other channels. I just don't have enough time in the day. So I think you try you try multiple streams, and then whatever works, you stick with.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've had the 5 businesses. Are you a big believer in having 5 businesses running at one time, or only having one at a time, or perhaps a couple of them? What's your advice on that?
Well, I think you can only, just like social media, like I just mentioned, you can only really give one business your full attention. I think you can't be all in on 5 businesses, because there's no way to have the time. You can't spend your time doing 5 things at once. You have to pick and choose. So one of those businesses is going to get more of your support, and the other ones are sort of going to get your attention whenever you need it. So, I mean, running, and I don't own 5 businesses right now, but if I ran, let's just say all 5 of my businesses were up and running right now, I'd have to have people in place and processes in place for those businesses where I know they don't need my attention all the time, and they're going to run without me being in the business. But then it's okay. But if you have businesses where you don't have any employees and don't have any people to run them for you, then absolutely no. I would say never try to do that. It's not you're not setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so I have a question for you and also for the audience. Here's a would you rather question. Would you rather question or an open-ended? I'll give you a choice.
I mean, go for it. Whatever. I'm game. You're getting an answer from me regardless.
Okay, so would you rather have a career writing for a well-known yet controversial tabloid newspaper, or have a career writing for a popular teen heartthrob magazine that specializes in boy bands?
Oh, man. Well, I'm a terrible writer, so I think my career would be, I would definitely get fired by either one of them. Yeah, I mean, the whole boy band thing, I think they would fire me. I would probably get fired there first. Yeah, I mean, writing for a controversial tabloid, I mean, really depends on, I guess, if I'm picking my topics. Yeah, sure. I think I can do that to an extent. But yeah, I mean, I'm not the best writer.
So in a conversation with friends, are you the one that likes to pick the more controversial, edgy topics, or you like to keep it kind of tame? Where do you typically go?
I mean, controversy. I don't want to attract towards controversy. I do like to I like to talk about things that challenge people's natural way of thinking, I would say.
Yes, I like that.
I don't want to, when I'm in a conversation with people especially new people, I want to learn. I feel like we walk around with so much knowledge in our head, and to us, it's like, no one cares about that. But to other people really do care, and they're honestly intrigued about stuff. So for me, I like to have a conversation that I can actually walk away from and say, I learned something there, instead of having something where it's like a heated debate or conversation.
I like that. Okay, applause for that one, Jonathan. That was a great point. That's a clip right there. Nice. There you go. So there you go, Frank. There's your audience right there.
All right.
Okay, so Frank, what's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
Well, I'll tell you this because I know this for fact because people have told me this. So, I mean, back when we were able to, conferences and stuff like that, I've spoken at conferences so often and been parts of them. And people have told me that they feel like I'm a jerk, like that they don't know me. So before I speak or whatever, they see me at conferences like there's a Frank guy, but they don't want to approach me because they feel like I'm going to be like, just a jerk. Like you look, like you're not going to talk to anyone. You're not going to be, I didn't expect
Right.
this from you. I get
Right.
that, which is to me, I don't like, I love hearing that because it's like, you judge people. I'm a big person of not judging people by, like just like, okay,
Right.
making an assumption on something before I actually know them. I want to know what's below the surface. And for me, if someone thinks that, shame on them that they never got to know who I was. But for the people who did take the time to get to know me, yeah, then they're like, man, I didn't expect you, to be this fun or whatever.
Right.
And that's, so for me, it's been great because I think a lot of times we do that. We walk through life thinking stuff and then we miss out on so much opportunity.
So true.
So that's a big one.
Anybody who's watching it, let us know if there's something about you that usually surprises people when they first hear it about you. I'd love for you to share it in the comments. I have another question for you. Would you rather save money or save time?
Time.
Why is that?
It's our most valuable asset. We can't get any more. We can spend it. We can't get it back. So my time is very valuable for sure. That no matter what you're doing, I mean, this day, this second that just passed, it's gone forever. You never, doesn't matter what. If you had all the money in the world, you can never get that last second back. So I think for me, time is, and as I gotten older, I think time is extremely, I just put so much value on it. So for sure, time is a big one.
Amen to that. That's an applause for that one too. I love that one. That's a great answer. I agree 100%. 100% for that one. Yeah, because people say time is money. That's a misnomer. Time is not money because money you can earn back again. But like you said, time, you can't get that back.
Nope.
Once you give it. So that's why I appreciate you spending this time with me, and those who are watching, thank you for spending this time with me. I appreciate it. You're investing. Now, one other question for you. If you could meet any historical figure, who would you choose and why?
Wow. No one's ever asked me that one before.
And those in the comments, I want you to answer the same thing. Let me know what you guys think.
I mean, dead or alive, doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, I would, yeah, historical, as long as they're considered historical in your mind.
Yeah. Probably. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's probably a few that I would want. I would
What's the
say
first
probably
one? First one came to your mind.
probably Muhammad Ali. I think
Muhammad
would be,
Ali. Oh, wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think I mean, I've always been fascinated by him. I was trying to think of someone in more like in the political spectrum, but yeah, Muhammad Ali's, I've always been attracted to him. Just his attitude. I think he was very cocky, but cocky enough where people loved him, but also where, I mean, he believed everything that he put out there. And me personally, I admire that in someone because I think to an extent, especially if you're starting a business or if you're trying to, you have to believe in yourself, because if you are putting something out there and you don't believe in you, no one else is going to believe in you. Oh, I think I froze, or you froze. Okay. There you go.
Okay. Am I back?
You're
Did
back.
are we still rolling?
The
Oh,
audience heard me.
no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Guys, I'm so sorry. Well, I'm glad I'm back. Okay. I was just saying that you were talking about Muhammad Ali and how you admired him. And one of the things I saw, well, it was like an interview or something with him. And in the interview, he was talking about how when he was young, he watched this wrestler. And the wrestler, I think his name was Gorgeous George, I believe. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I know Gorgeous George was a wrestler for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he followed him, and when he saw how he would kind of brag about himself and stuff like this, he says, I'm basically gonna do the same thing."
Mhm.
And so that's when he kind of got into that, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and all that kind of stuff. How he taught how you look good and everything. He's so pretty and all that.
Mhm.
I thought it was pretty funny just to watch. Like you said, he was a likable guy. His whole demeanor about himself was very likable.
Oh yeah.
That's a cool thing a cool guy you picked out there. Okay, would you rather, Frank, always look great to everyone you meet, but frequently say the wrong thing, or always have the right thing to say, but frequently look terrible? Folks in the comments, I want you to answer the same thing.
Look
What would you
terrible,
say?
like physically.
However you want to define that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I mean, I'm not a big, whatever. I mean, of course, I put myself together and stuff, but I don't put too much into. I don't do it for the stuff I do when I look good. I guess physically, if we're talking about looking good physically, I honestly don't. It's for me. If I wear certain clothes or I work out and I want my body to look a certain way, those are things I do for me, not because I want to take my shirt off and flex on people. So physical stuff isn't important to me. I think the speaking piece and having answers and that I like to be very informed. I like to do research. I like to be able to hold a conversation and not just be one dimensional. So yeah, I would probably defer to the latter.
Makes sense. Okay, I like it. Okay, so what's a piece of advice you'd like to give me if, let's say, I'm starting off my first business, I'm just getting going, and I'm trying to grow my business. Maybe I'm trying to grow it on LinkedIn. What's a piece of advice you'd like to give me for that?
Well, I mean, for business in general, for anyone out there who's starting a business, I would say don't make it about the money. And it's easy for someone to say who's makes now my business and make money, so it's fine. But I would say in the beginning, um, don't be. You have to make money in order to stay solvent and pay bills and things like that. So you have to focus enough on the money so that you can keep the business going and growing, but don't make it about the money for material things to say for chasing stuff like I want watches and cars and material stuff. I would say the money piece is so you can grow the business, and then you'll be able to get nice things over time. But focusing on the money right away and how much can I pay myself? I think social media, again, you look at stuff and it seems like everyone's a millionaire. Everyone's driving these fancy cars and lives in big houses.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
how do they do it? So I think that there's this perception of that going on in our lives, especially for people starting a business. I'd say you pay yourself what you need to, put every dollar back into the business, and keep investing in that company, and you'll be around a lot longer.
I like that. Yeah, let's give him some applause for that one. See, there you go. There's an audience. They love you, Frank. My audience loves you. Um, no, I agree. I agree 100% with that. And also the other thing too is maybe you'll agree with me on this. Is sometimes when you're seeing other people, they're posting certain things, and you're like, man, this person has this and this person has that, and I'm not sure if I even measure up. But going back to part of what you said is you may think that they've got all this stuff going on, but they may not necessarily have that much going on. Here you are feeling bad about yourself. What are your thoughts on that?
That's one of my biggest pet peeves, and honestly, things like that used to bother me more than it does now, because I feel like it's just people are out there trying to faking it and whatever. Um, People that talk about how much money they have, the businesses, the people like, oh, I scale businesses to seven figures, or I help you get to your first six figures in 90 days. Probably don't even make six figures themselves, or probably never seen a business that makes seven figures. Extremely wealthy people. I'm part of a community of entrepreneurs that have seen success way beyond probably what I'll ever reach. And I've seen ones that are just starting out. Mostly none of them are talking about the financial aspect, or the cars that they drive and the things that the excess that we have. I think it's more what they get out of these things, because honestly, for me, success is not. When I was younger and I started my first business, I used to think that success was driven by, models and bottles and boats and jets and fashion and all these things that you see today on social media. Even back then, it was like, that's cool stuff. I want the glitz and the glamour. And today, the older version of Frank that actually has been successful, it's not defined. You strip all the material things away, take them all. You can have everything: my house, my car, my watches. You can have all the stuff. And I will still be happy. The people who I surround myself with, people matter. Not material things. Material things, you like them for a little while, and then it's like, not so much. I got watches that I don't even wear anymore. So I think the material stuff is temporary, and you can always buy more of it. You can't buy time. You can't buy people. You can't buy experiences. And that's what I choose to. That's what makes me successful today.
Oh, I love that. Okay, now today, if you were giving advice to the Frank Mengert of 20 years ago, and you could only tell him two things. What two things would you tell that version of Frank?
I would tell him the winning lottery ticket numbers for that $1 billion lottery that someone just won. That's for sure. um, and I would tell him that everything is going to work out. Just keep doing what you're doing. Honestly, people have asked me like, "Oh, what regrets you have? What you would change in life?" And I like this whole butterfly effect thing. I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect, and so I feel like I'm in a really good. I love life. I'm very happy with life. I have this attitude of gratitude. I'm just couldn't be happier. Where if I made a change, 20 years ago, if I was able to tell myself something different, where I would be today, I might not be that happy person. I might not be the person that I am today. So, in the lottery ticket thing, yeah, maybe money, having $1 billion isn't going to be the best thing for me. So I think when you look back, I've learned so much: success, failures. I met great people. I've been burned by bad people. But where I'm at today is really, like, I feel like it's just such a good spot, professionally and personally, where I'm not willing to make any risks there.
Okay, all right. Do you feel like you learn more from your successes or your failures?
For failures, for sure. Yeah, I think because success, I think is something that will. Every time you reach different levels for success, you feel like, oh wow, this was new to me. I never had this before. I think from a material perspective, for failures, you learn. I think you minimize, as long as you're minimizing them, those are actually can change your life. I think when you fail at something, most of the time you never want that to happen again. So it's not only a correction, so to prevent it, but also internally built. It's like a building block inside. So for me, the failure piece is, always learning. And I think we're not perfect. We're going to fail,
Right.
small, large. We try to minimize them.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, you dropped a lot of knowledge on us today. I really appreciate the time that you spent today. And just briefly, if you don't mind, because we didn't get a chance to talk much about your business, what is it you do in your business? And also, what's the best way for folks to contact you afterwards?
So my business is we work with large companies for their employee benefits, so insurance side of their technology, so medical, dental, vision, things like that. So we work with large companies to help automate. We're putting time back in the day of busy HR professionals. So we automate all the processes around compliance for employee benefits. My company's called EBM. You can find out more at getebm.com. And of course, LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn, and, Frank Mengert, you can find me there. I'm pretty active there as well.
Or you can use the hashtag FrankieBaby too, right?
Find all my content. Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, I've definitely watched several of your videos and I always enjoy it. You do great work. Guys, thanks for joining us in the comments. Henry and Kirsten and Gwen and Joanne, Jonathan, everyone. So thank you for that. Appreciate you being on today, Frank, and keep up the great work, my man.
I appreciate it as well. Thanks to the audience. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to stay on, but we'll just say bye to the audience for now. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
For us to stop the broadcast. I know you're a fellow LinkedIn liver too, but in the past I would